Figures sound correct? Made around 400 million during your career?
I don't know, it could have been.
Yet end up spending more than you made, and at one point were like 50 million in debt?
Yeah, that was amazing too. But
How does that happen?
just being reckless and young and foolish and stuff.
Leon Spinks, the gap-toothed giant slayer who shocked the world by defeating Muhammad Ali, represents the unprepared victor, a man catapulted into a world of fame and temptation for which he had no defenses, leading to an immediate and chaotic self-destruction. And Riddick Bowe, a fighter of immense physical gifts, whose story introduces the most tragic variable of all, the possibility that the very sport that made him rich and famous may have inflicted the brain trauma that rendered him incapable of managing his life, his fortune, or his own violent impulses. By dissecting these individual narratives, we can begin to understand the common threads: the psychology of sudden wealth, the predatory ecosystem that surrounds fighters, the absence of institutional support, and the devastating physical and mental toll of the sport. This is not just a story about lost money, it is a story about the intricate, often destructive relationship between brutal talent, unimaginable wealth, and human fragility. The financial story of Mike Tyson is best understood not as a gradual decline but as a sustained, high-velocity explosion. He was a phenomenon who generated wealth with a speed and on a scale rarely seen in sports, and he dissipated it with the same terrifying efficiency. His journey from a net worth in the hundreds of millions to a bankruptcy filing laden with debt is a case study in how unprecedented earning power, when combined with a volatile personality, a lack of guidance, and a predatory environment, can create a perfect storm for financial destruction. The scale of the fortune. Before delving into how the money was lost, it is essential to grasp the sheer magnitude of the fortune Tyson amassed. During his prime in the 1990s, he was one of the highest-paid athletes in the world, a global icon whose fights were must-see events. Estimates of his total career earnings vary, but consistently fall within the staggering range of $400 million to over $600 million. These were not figures accumulated over a long, steady career, they were generated in massive, concentrated bursts. At his peak, Tyson was earning up to $30 million for a single fight, paydays that could instantly alter the financial reality of anyone, let alone a young man who had emerged from the poverty and violence of Brownsville, Brooklyn. This method of wealth generation, immense, sudden, and tied directly to acts of physical dominance, is a critical factor in understanding the psychology that would later fuel his spending. It created a mindset where money was not a resource to be managed and grown, but a prize to be won and consumed. Tyson's expenditures became legendary, often cited as textbook examples of profligate celebrity spending. Yet to view them merely as a list of poor financial decisions is to miss the point. His spending was a public performance, an extension of the persona he cultivated as the baddest man on the planet. The same explosive, intimidating force he projected in the ring was mirrored in his financial life, where overwhelming displays of wealth served as an extension of his dominance. The numbers are breathtaking. His spending included $6.3 million on a fleet of luxury cars and motorcycles, a $580,000 party for his 30th birthday, and the infamous acquisition of pet Siberian tigers. One anecdote encapsulates the almost nonsensical nature of his consumption. After purchasing a new, multi-$100,000 sports car, Tyson drove it a few times, decided he disliked it, and then paid someone tens of thousands of dollars to chop it up and convert it into pool furniture. This was not the action of a rational economic actor, however extravagant. It was a demonstration of power, a statement that his wealth was so immense that even the most valuable objects were disposable. This behavior was rooted in a personality that was, by his own admission and the accounts of those around him, fundamentally uncontrollable. He loathed advice and direction, and those who attempted to rein in his spending or his lifestyle were often met with childish outbursts and intimidating anger. This psychological makeup made sound financial management an impossibility. The spending wasn't a byproduct of his success, it was, in many ways, the point of it. It was a raw, unfiltered expression of the power and chaos that had come to define his identity, making financial ruin not just a risk, but a near inevitability. While Tyson's internal chaos was the primary engine of his financial downfall, he was also surrounded by external forces that profited from it. His personal volatility and his financial exploitation were symbiotically linked. His rejection of sound advice and his intimidating demeanor created a vacuum in his inner circle, leaving him vulnerable to manipulative figures who could capitalize on the disorder. The central figure in this aspect of his story is the controversial promoter Don King. Tyson's relationship with King was fraught with mistrust, culminating in a lawsuit in which Tyson accused King of cheating him out of an estimated $100 million through shady contracts and financial manipulation. This alleged exploitation represented a massive drain on his earnings, a systemic bleeding of funds that occurred in parallel with his own extravagant spending. Other significant financial drains compounded the problem. His high-profile and tumultuous divorce from actress Robin Givens in 1989 cost him millions. More devastatingly, his 1992 conviction for rape resulted in a 3-year prison sentence. This not only halted his earning power during what should have been his peak years but also eroded his existing wealth through substantial legal fees. The cycle was vicious: the more he earned, the more he spent, and the more he was exploited. His internal state and the external predation fed off each other, creating a feedback loop that dramatically accelerated his path toward insolvency. The inevitable crash came in 2003, when Mike Tyson, a man who had earned over $400 million, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. He claimed a staggering $23 million in debt, a figure that included millions owed to the IRS, foreign tax authorities, and a $9 million divorce settlement. His net worth had plummeted from the stratosphere to deep into the negative. It was the logical conclusion of a decade of unchecked spending, legal troubles, and financial mismanagement. Yet, what followed is perhaps the most remarkable chapter of his financial story. Tyson's comeback from financial devastation is a testament to his resilience and a story of profound personal reinvention. After years of smaller-scale earnings from acting roles and book deals, he found a new and highly lucrative path in an unlikely industry: cannabis. He co-founded Tyson 2.0, a cannabis brand that has become a major success in the U.S. market. Reports suggest the company is a booming enterprise, with some sources claiming it provides him with a monthly income of around $900,000. This business success was complemented by a return to the ring. In 2020, at the age of 54, Tyson fought an exhibition match against fellow legend Roy Jones Jr. The event was a massive commercial success, reportedly generating over $80 million globally and providing another significant boost to his personal earnings. As of 2025, Mike Tyson's net worth is estimated to be around $10 million. It is a far cry from the hundreds of millions he once commanded, but it represents a remarkable recovery from the depths of bankruptcy. He now reportedly lives a more modest lifestyle in Las Vegas, a man who has seemingly tamed the financial hurricane that once consumed him. Unlike the sudden, explosive financial implosion of Mike Tyson, the downfall of Evander Holyfield was a gradual and grinding process, a war of attrition against his own fortune. Holyfield, the 4-time heavyweight champion known for his warrior's heart and discipline in the ring, did not lose his wealth in a flash flood of hedonism. Instead, his estimated $200 million plus in career earnings was slowly bled away by the immense, crushing weight of an empire he could not sustain. His story is anchored by the central metaphor of his gargantuan Atlanta estate, a symbol of ultimate success that became an unsustainable liability, symptomatic of a broader, catastrophic failure to manage the long-term costs of his lifestyle, his business ventures, and his sprawling family obligations. At the heart of Holyfield's financial narrative stands his 54,000 square foot mansion in Fayette County, Georgia. It was more than a home, it was a monument to his success, the physical embodiment of his real deal persona. The scale was almost beyond comprehension for a private residence: 109 rooms, a 135-seat home theater, a bowling alley, 2 swimming pools, and a dining room capable of seating 100 guests. He reportedly paid $30.8 million in cash for the property, a massive capital outlay that was only the beginning of its financial drain. The true cost of the mansion was not its purchase price, but its staggering overhead. The property required an estimated $1 million per year in taxes and upkeep alone. The costs for necessities like gardening, air conditioning, and electricity were more akin to those of a luxury hotel than a family home. This reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of asset management. Holyfield had acquired an institution without securing the institutional revenue required to support it. The mansion became a financial black hole, continuously siphoning his resources long after his peak earning years had passed. The inevitable end came in 2008. Facing mounting debts, Holyfield's estate went into foreclosure. At one point, he owed at least $14 million on the mortgage. The property was eventually sold at a public auction to a bank for just $7.5 million, a catastrophic financial loss. The 109-room albatross, once the ultimate symbol of his wealth, had become the tombstone of his fortune. The entrepreneurial mirage compounding the relentless drain from his estate was a series of disastrous forays into the world of business. Holyfield attempted to leverage his name and capital into new revenue streams, but these ventures consistently failed, accelerating his financial decline. His list of flops includes a record label, Real Deal Records, which cost him a reported $3.08 million, £2.3 million. An unsuccessful restaurant business proved even more costly, bleeding another $11.1 million, £7.6 million, from his fortune. Beyond these major investments, he attached his name to a number of smaller, almost comically unpopular products, including his own line of barbecue sauce, a kitchen grill, and even a fire extinguisher, none of which returned a profit. To make matters worse, Holyfield developed a penchant for high-stakes gambling. He reportedly lost significant sums betting on a variety of sports in the casinos of Las Vegas and Atlantic City, a habit that further eroded his dwindling capital. Each failed venture and losing bet was another cut, contributing to the slow but steady exsanguination of his wealth. The third major pressure point on Holyfield's finances was his extensive and complex family life. Over the course of his life, he fathered 11 children with 5 different women and went through 3 divorces. While a personal matter, this had profound and crippling financial consequences. The ongoing cost of child support payments became an immense burden, particularly as his income from boxing declined. His struggles became public and led to serious legal troubles. By 2012, he owed approximately $500,000 in back child support, a delinquency that threatened him with potential jail time. In one instance, his own 18-year-old daughter sued him for $372,000 in unpaid maintenance. In court proceedings, it was revealed that while Holyfield's gross monthly income was once over $600,000, he was now struggling to make payments of just a few $1,000s. He lamented the difficulty of his situation, stating, "Dealing with all the mothers of all my kids, there ain't no winning here, man, no winning at all." Holyfield's story demonstrates a different kind of financial illiteracy from that of Mike Tyson. It was not purely a case of impulsive hedonism, but rather a catastrophic failure in long-term financial planning. He appeared to operate under the assumption that championship-level income was perpetual. He simultaneously took on the liabilities of a large corporation, the mansion, a venture capitalist, the businesses, and the patriarch of multiple large families, all without a sustainable financial structure to support any of them. He was a master of discipline inside the ring, but he lacked the foresight and the support system to manage generational wealth outside of it. By 2012, Evander Holyfield was declared bankrupt. The financial ruin was so complete that he was forced to auction off his most prized possessions and career memorabilia in what was described as one of the world's biggest sales of sporting artifacts. Items for sale included his world title belts and the gloves, boots, and robe from the infamous 1997 bite fight against Mike Tyson. Today, his net worth is estimated to be around $1 million, a tiny fraction of the more than $200 million he grossed during his illustrious career. He has attempted to remain active with a boxing promotion company and speaking engagements, but his financial standing is permanently diminished. His journey from a 9-figure fortune to near destitution serves as a powerful cautionary tale of how even the greatest of fortunes can be lost not in a single knockout blow, but through 1,000 cuts. The financial ruin of Joe Louis stands apart as a profound historical tragedy. Unlike the self-inflicted wounds of extravagance, addiction, or mismanagement that plagued other champions, the destruction of Louis's wealth was largely imposed upon him by external forces. His story is a cruel irony in which his deep patriotism and profound generosity collided with a rigid, complex, and punitive wartime tax system. He was a national icon celebrated for his character and service, yet he was hounded into poverty by the very government he so proudly served. Louis's downfall was not a personal failing but a bureaucratic catastrophe, the ultimate counter-narrative to the irresponsible athlete trope. To understand the injustice of Joe Louis's financial fate, one must first appreciate the depth of his character. Born into a nation rife with segregation, Louis transcended the racial barriers of his time to become a symbol of American unity and strength, particularly during World War II. His patriotism was not passive, it was demonstrated through action and immense personal sacrifice. When the war began, he halted his lucrative boxing career and enlisted as a private in the U.S. Army, earning a meager salary of just $21 a month. During his service, he did not see combat but fought in 96 exhibition matches before some 2 million troops. His most significant contributions, however, were financial. In an extraordinary display of generosity, Louis donated the entirety of his fight purses from 2 championship bouts to the military relief funds. Just 1 month after the attack on Pearl Harbor, he gave his entire $65,200 fee, a sum equivalent to over $700,000 in today's money, to the Naval Relief Fund. Less than 3 months later, he followed this by donating his $45,882 purse from another fight to the Army Relief Fund. In total, he donated over $100,000 to the war effort, a fortune at the time. These acts were extensions of a lifelong habit of generosity. Years earlier, he had voluntarily paid back all the welfare payments his family had received during the Great Depression and frequently helped friends, family, and even strangers in need. It was these very acts of patriotic charity that became the mechanism of his financial destruction. The problem lay in the arcane and unforgiving structure of the U.S. tax code. Although Lewis intended the money to go directly to the relief funds, the purses were technically paid to him first. Because he endorsed the checks, the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, classified the full amounts as taxable personal income. This bureaucratic technicality had devastating consequences. The context of the era's tax laws made the situation catastrophic. Under President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and to fund the war effort, the top marginal income tax rate had soared to an astonishing 90%. This meant that Lewis was suddenly faced with a massive tax liability on money that he never kept. In a move of staggering bureaucratic indifference, the IRS refused to allow him to deduct these donations as charitable contributions. The system was so rigid that it even denied him a deduction for $3,000 worth of tickets he had personally purchased for soldiers to attend one of the charity fights. He was trapped in a financial nightmare born from his own goodwill. His patriotism had, in a literal, financial sense, been weaponized against him by a system incapable of recognizing the substance of his actions over their technical form. This initial tax ruling set in motion a lifetime of inescapable debt. By the end of the 1940s, Lewis found himself over $500,000 in debt to the IRS in back taxes. With interest compounding each year, this debt ballooned to more than $1 million during the 1950s. The IRS was relentless in its pursuit of this debt, hounding him for the rest of his life. The financial pressure forced him out of retirement in 1949, long past his prime, simply to earn money to pay the government. He fought Ezid Charles for the championship in 1950 and lost. The following year, at age 37, he faced a young, undefeated Rocky Marciano. The fight earned him a $300,000 purse, but after paying the 90% tax rate on his earnings, what remained was a pittance that did little to reduce his principal debt. The Marciano fight ended in a brutal knockout, a sad and definitive end to the career of one of boxing's greatest champions. The pitilessness of the IRS pursuit was astonishing. When his mother died in 1953, the agency swiftly seized the $667 she had left to him in her will. This relentless hounding reveals a deeper, more troubling aspect of Lewis's story. As a prominent African-American hero in a segregated nation, he was celebrated as a symbol but was not afforded the protection of the systems he represented. He lacked the access to the sophisticated legal and financial counsel that might have navigated these tax complexities and protected a white athlete in a similar situation. His financial ruin was not just a personal tragedy, it was a reflection of the structural inequality and bureaucratic indifference of his time. Unable to box, Lewis took on any work he could find to satisfy the tax collectors. He became a professional wrestler, a sport for which he had no training and which resulted in severe injuries, including crushed ribs and heart damage that left him in chronic pain. He made guest appearances on quiz shows and, in the most poignant chapter of his decline, ended his days working as a greeter at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, a living legend reduced to a casino attraction. He died in 1981, still in debt to the government. In a final, touching irony, his old German rival from the 1930s, Max Schmeling, who had become a successful businessman, assisted Lewis financially during his final years and ultimately helped pay for his funeral expenses. Joe Louis, America's hero, was left broken by the country he served, a powerful and enduring symbol of how systemic forces can crush even the greatest of individuals. While some champions see their fortunes erode over decades, others experience a much more rapid and severe collapse. The stories of Leon Spinks and Riddick Bowe are parallel narratives of being overwhelmed, of champions whose time at the pinnacle of the sport was brief but whose subsequent falls were calamitous. Spinks was a victim of the blinding spotlight, his sudden fame and wealth acting as fuel for a pre-existing fire of self-destruction. Bowe, a man of immense talent, saw his career and life derailed by his own violent impulses and the sport's brutal physical toll, raising profound questions about the hidden costs of boxing. The story of Leon Spinks is a classic case study in the psychological impact of too much, too soon. In February 1978, in one of the biggest upsets in boxing history, Spinks, a 1976 Olympic gold medalist with only 7 professional fights, defeated the legendary Muhammad Ali to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. It was a life-altering event that catapulted him from relative obscurity to global fame and fortune, a transition for which he was utterly unprepared. His reign as champion lasted only 7 months before he lost the title back to Ali in a rematch. However, the financial rewards were substantial, including a purse of $3.5 million for the second fight. But this newfound wealth was quickly squandered. Spinks lacked the personal foundation and support system to handle his new status, and his life descended into a chaotic spiral of indulgence. His fortune was rapidly consumed by a lifestyle of booze, drugs, and partying. He once admitted, "All I cared about was going to the next party and who was I going to get high with. My life was cocaine, weed, cars, and women. And I enjoyed it." The speed of his descent was alarming. Just 2 months after winning the title, Spinks was arrested for driving without headlights and for possession of small amounts of marijuana and cocaine, though the charges were later dropped. His dedication to the sport evaporated. Training became a mere inconvenience to his party-filled life. In contrast to his brother, Michael Spinks, who retired with a fortune, Leon became a peripheral figure in boxing, fighting for insignificant sums and ending his career in 1995 with a record of 26 wins, 17 losses, and 3 draws. His story is a stark illustration of an individual who won the greatest prize in sports but lacked the coping mechanisms to survive the victory, leading to an immediate and near-total implosion of his career and finances. Riddick Big Daddy Bowe was a fighter of immense natural talent, a charismatic and powerful heavyweight who defeated Evander Holyfield in 1992 to become the undisputed champion. His earning power was enormous. In 1995 alone, Forbes listed his earnings at $22.2 million, and he commanded purses as high as $7 million for a single fight. Yet, his career and life were ultimately defined not by his achievements in the ring, but by his erratic behavior and a shocking criminal act outside of it. The defining event of Bowe's downfall occurred in February 1998, when he was arrested for kidnapping his estranged wife, Judy, and their 5 children from their home in North Carolina. Believing the act would reconcile his marriage, he threatened his wife with a knife and other restraints, forced her and the children into a vehicle, and set out for his home in Maryland before being apprehended by police. He was convicted of interstate domestic violence and eventually served 17 months in federal prison. Bowe's financial collapse followed his personal one. In October 2005, he filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, listing more than $4.1 million in claims against him from various creditors. He later claimed that a former manager had stolen $15 million from him, though he surprisingly opted not to pursue legal action. His life after boxing was marked by struggle. After a brief and unsuccessful comeback, he reportedly took a job as a bus driver. However, Bowe's narrative contains a critical and tragic variable that complicates any simple judgment of his actions: the impact of brain damage. During his sentencing for the kidnapping, the judge explicitly cited boxing brain injuries as a reason for imposing a lenient initial sentence, noting that damage from blows to the head had likely impaired his judgment. Neurologists testified that Bowe suffered from mild to moderate brain damage, a syndrome common in former boxers. Later in his comeback attempt, he was denied a boxing license by the state of Tennessee over concerns about his health. This raises a profound and disturbing question: to what extent were Bowe's violent criminal actions and subsequent financial mismanagement the product of cognitive impairment caused by the very sport that made him rich? His story is not just one of poor choices or a flawed character. It is potentially the story of a man whose capacity for rational decision-making was destroyed by his profession. Bowe's violent implosion serves as a tragic testament to the hidden, life-altering costs of heavyweight boxing. The individual stories of these 5 heavyweight champions, while unique in their details, collectively paint a vivid picture of the multifaceted nature of financial ruin in professional boxing. Moving from their distinct narratives to a broader analysis reveals a set of recurring themes and systemic failures that connect their fates. By synthesizing their experiences, we can identify the common pressures, psychological, environmental, and physical, that make these celebrated athletes so uniquely vulnerable to falling from the highest heights to the deepest lows.